I never thought a routine doctor's appointment would turn into one of the strangest and honestly most confusing experiences of my life. But here I am, sitting at my desk, still replaying it in my head, trying to figure out if I should be mortified or just grateful. The thing is, my checkup started off so normal it was almost boring. Until it wasn't. So, a little background. I'm 28, live in a pretty average apartment in the city, work in digital marketing, and generally avoid anything that disrupts my carefully curated routine. I'm not exactly the health nut type. I skip the gym more than I go, and my diet is mostly eat whatever's quick and doesn't require too much thought. So when I noticed I'd been feeling a bit off, more tired than usual, some minor aches, I figured it was time to see a doctor. Nothing dramatic, just a checkup to make sure nothing major was going wrong. I found Dr. Aaron Mitchell through my health insurance's online portal. His reviews were surprisingly good. People described him as kind, thorough, and a little unconventional. I didn't think much of that last part until I actually met him. The clinic was on the third floor of an unassuming building in the downtown area. The waiting room smelled like old magazines and antiseptic, and there was a faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. When my name was called, I was led into the exam room where Dr. Mitchell greeted me with this warm, easy smile that immediately put me at ease. He was in his mid-30s, tall, athletic build, with these deep-set hazel eyes that somehow struck a balance between professional curiosity and genuine kindness. His dark hair was slightly tousled, giving him a casual vibe that felt more like chatting with a friend than being poked and prodded by a doctor. We started with the usual questions: medical history, family background, lifestyle stuff. He listened carefully, nodding, sometimes jotting down notes. Then came the standard physical exam. That's when things got a little interesting. Dr. Mitchell was unusually hands-on, not in a creepy way, but with a kind of intensity I wasn't used to. When he checked my reflexes, he lingered a bit longer than I expected. When he palpated my abdomen, the touch felt oddly intimate, like he was trying to memorize every detail. I chalked it up to thoroughness. After all, the guy did have good reviews. But then, when he asked me to lie back on the exam table so he could listen to my heart and lungs, things shifted. His hands were warm, steady, and the way he looked at me felt different, like there was something unspoken between us. I caught myself wondering if he felt it too, or if I was just imagining things. And then, just as I was about to relax and let the exam finish, he said something that caught me off guard. "I want to make sure you're completely comfortable," he said, voice low and sincere. Before I could respond, he adjusted the lighting in the room, dimming it slightly, and suddenly the whole atmosphere felt less clinical and more personal. At that moment, my mind started racing. What was going on? Was I reading too much into this? Was this really still a medical exam, or was something else happening here? And honestly, part of me was curious, even excited. I wasn't sure where this was going, but I knew one thing. This doctor's checkup had definitely gone too far, and for some reason, I didn't want it to stop. I blinked, trying to process the sudden shift in the room's mood. The dimmed light felt oddly intimate, like the difference between sitting on a park bench under a street lamp and standing in a cozy bar with a low-lit corner table. It was weirdly comforting, but also a little disorienting given the setting. Dr. Mitchell glanced at me, his hazel eyes softer now, almost searching. "If at any point you feel uncomfortable, just say the word," he said quietly. "I want this to be a safe space." I swallowed, the usual nervousness of a doctor's appointment twisting into something else entirely. "Yeah, okay," I managed. "I appreciate that." He nodded and took a small step closer, lowering his voice even more. Sometimes physical health isn't just about the obvious stuff. Sometimes emotional or even personal factors can impact it. He hesitated, then asked, "Are you seeing anyone right now?" I wasn't sure why he was asking. Felt like a curveball in a health check, but I answered honestly. "No, not really. Just casually dating here and there, but nothing serious." He smiled, a little wistful. "Good to know. Then, with an almost imperceptible tilt of his head, he added, "Because sometimes care isn't just about prescriptions or tests." I was still on the exam table, feeling more exposed than usual, but not in a medical way. More like someone had peeled back the usual layers of small talk and clinical routine, and we were on the verge of something more human. "So," he said, pulling out a small stethoscope and placing the earpieces in his ears, "let's take another listen, but this time, I want you to take a deep breath and just relax." I did as he said, inhaling slowly, feeling the cool plastic of the stethoscope against my chest. The sound of my heartbeat thumped steadily in his ears, but I noticed him listening longer than necessary, as if memorizing the rhythm. "Steady heartbeat," he murmured, almost to himself. Then, as if making a decision, he kept the stethoscope in place a moment longer, his fingers lightly touching my collarbone while his gaze never left my face. I felt heat rising in my cheeks, the professional boundary blurring in a way that made my heart beat faster. Not from anxiety, but something unexpected. "Have you ever felt disconnected from your own body?" he asked, voice low. I frowned, caught off guard. "I guess sometimes. Fatigue, stress, the usual stuff." He nodded knowingly. "That's common, especially when you're juggling work, life, and trying to keep up a social life. But sometimes, a gentle touch, a little attention, can reconnect you." There it was, the phrase, gentle touch. It hung in the air between us, charged in a way I wasn't used to feeling in a doctor's office. Before I could say anything, he reached out, this time with deliberate care, placing his hand on my forearm. It was steady, reassuring, but also intimate. "Do you trust me?" he asked. It was such a simple question, but it knocked the breath out of me. I hesitated for a fraction of a second before the answer came out without me even thinking about it. "Yeah, I do." That seemed to satisfy him, because he gave a small smile and gently guided my hand to rest palm up on the exam table. Then, with a quiet confidence, he started to lightly massage my wrist, checking my pulse with slow, deliberate pressure. The sensation was strange, professional, yet somehow soothing. I found myself relaxing more than I ever expected. The stress from work, the constant buzzing of my phone, all of it seemed to fade away as I focused on his touch. "I'm not just your doctor right now," he said softly. "Think of me as someone who's here to help you feel whole again." I looked up at him, and in that moment, I realized there was something more in his expression than just medical concern. There was a tenderness I hadn't anticipated. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, curiosity overtaking the lingering awkwardness. Aaron hesitated, then said, "Because sometimes the kind of healing we need isn't found in charts or pills. It's found in connection, and I think you might need that." His words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how lonely I'd been feeling until then, how much I'd been craving something real, something that wasn't just surface level. He moved his hand from my wrist to my shoulder, applying gentle pressure that made me catch my breath. The room felt suddenly smaller, more intimate, like we were the only two people in the world. "Are you okay with this?" he asked again, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, unsure how to put into words the strange mix of nervousness and comfort swirling inside me. "Good," he said, and then his hand shifted just slightly, tracing a slow, careful path down my arm. For a moment, I forgot I was at a doctor's appointment at all. It felt like we had crossed some invisible line, stepping into a space where vulnerability wasn't just accepted. It was welcomed. I wanted to tell him how unexpected this was, how confusing, but also how much I wanted to lean into it. Before I could say anything, the door creaked open, and a nurse popped her head in. "Oh, sorry. I just came to bring your blood test results," she said cheerily. Aaron pulled his hand away quickly, but the warmth lingered like a spark. "Thanks," he said, standing up and straightening his coat. "Let's take a look." As the nurse left, Aaron met my eyes and smiled in a way that made my chest tighten. "Maybe," he said quietly. "This checkup isn't quite over yet." And just like that, I realized that this appointment, which started like any other, was about to become something far more complicated, and maybe even life-changing. He stepped over to the small computer screen on the counter, fingers dancing over the keyboard as the blood test results loaded. I settled back onto the exam table, trying to shake the lingering tension from the unexpected intimacy, but I couldn't help stealing glances at him. There was something different in the way he moved, a newfound ease that contrasted with the usual clinical precision I expected from a doctor. "Your blood work looks pretty much perfect," Aaron said, casting a glance over his shoulder. "No infections, no vitamin deficiencies, no red flags." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "That's good news." "Yeah," he agreed, the smile returning to his lips. Then, after a beat, he added, "So the fatigue and aches? Probably more stress than anything physical." His tone was gentle, almost fatherly. I nodded, but inside I felt a little disappointed. I'd hoped for a clearer explanation, some tangible reason for how I'd been feeling. Instead, it was the same old, vague diagnosis that always seemed to come up when nothing concrete showed on the tests. He caught my expression and said, "You know, sometimes stress can manifest physically, just like you're experiencing. The body and mind are connected in complicated ways." "Yeah, I know," I said, feeling a little defensive. "But it doesn't really help to just say, stress. I mean, I'm tired of feeling like I'm falling apart, and no one really looking beyond the surface." Aaron's expression softened, and he pulled up a chair, sitting down facing me. "That's fair. And honestly, I get it. Medicine can be cold and impersonal, but I want to treat you, not just your symptoms." For a moment, I studied him. This guy, a complete stranger just an hour ago, was suddenly the person I felt most connected to. It was ridiculous, but also kind of amazing. "What do you suggest then?" I asked, curious despite myself. He leaned back in the chair, fingers steepled. "Well, since we've established your physical health is solid, maybe it's time to focus on emotional well-being. Have you ever thought about therapy or counseling?" I shrugged. "I've thought about it, but never actually done it. I guess I'm not sure it would help." Aaron smiled wryly. "I get that. It's not for everyone. But sometimes just having someone to talk through the stuff you don't want to admit to friends or family can make a huge difference." "Yeah," I said, more contemplative now. "I guess I've been pretty closed off, even to myself." He nodded, eyes warm. "It's okay. Opening up is hard." Then he added quietly, "And sometimes, the right connection can help you find the courage." I glanced down, feeling heat crawl up my neck again. That phrase, "the right connection," felt like a subtle invitation, and I wasn't sure how to respond. Aaron stood up, stretching just a little. "Look, I know this isn't your typical appointment, and I hope I'm not overstepping, but if you want, I'm here. For questions, advice, or even just to talk." "Thanks," I said honestly. "It means a lot." We sat in a comfortable silence for a moment before he cleared his throat. "Well, if you're feeling up to it, I'd recommend some light exercise, maybe yoga or something low impact. It can really help with stress and fatigue." I nodded again, imagining myself at a yoga class, trying not to be the awkward guy who can't touch his toes. "I'll give it a shot." "Good," Aaron said, smiling. "And hey, if you want, I can recommend a few therapists I trust." "Maybe," I said, not quite committing, but feeling less resistant than before. He picked up the clipboard from the exam table. "I'm gonna write up some notes, then we'll wrap up." As he scribbled, I couldn't help but notice how focused he looked. Even the casual moments felt charged with a kind of intensity. Before he handed me the paperwork, he caught my eye again. "By the way," he said, voice lowering just a touch, "if you ever want to come back just to talk, no pressure, no judgment, you're welcome anytime." I felt my heart skip. "Thanks, Dr. Mitchell. I might take you up on that." He grinned. "Please do." The rest of the appointment felt almost anticlimactic, but in a good way. We chatted about normal stuff, diet, sleep, avoiding burnout. But the undercurrent between us was unmistakable, like an unspoken promise that this wasn't the end of our story. As I gathered my things to leave, Aaron surprised me by walking me to the door. "Hey," he said casually, "there's a coffee shop just down the street a few blocks. If you want, maybe we could grab a cup sometime? No doctor stuff, just talk." My mind went blank for a moment. Was this really happening? A date invite from my doctor? Part of me was screaming, "This is a conflict of interest, professional boundaries." But another part was thinking, "Hell yeah, I want that." I smiled, trying not to sound too eager. "Sure, I'd like that. He gave me this quick, genuine smile that made my chest tighten again. Great, I'll text you the details. We exchanged numbers, and I left the clinic feeling like I was floating, unsure whether I'd just had the most bizarre doctor's appointment ever or the start of something new. Walking down the street, I kept looking at my phone, waiting to see if he'd text. When it finally buzzed, I grinned at the message. Can't wait to see you. Outside the exam room this time. And just like that, the line between doctor and patient blurred into something neither of us expected, but both seemed ready to explore. I didn't know where it was headed, but for the first time in a long time, I was okay with not knowing. A couple of days later, I found myself sitting in that little coffee shop Aaron had suggested. Nothing fancy, just a quiet spot with mismatched chairs and the smell of fresh espresso hanging in the air. I was way more nervous than I expected to be. I mean, it wasn't a date, at least not officially, just two grown men grabbing coffee. But there was this electric energy beneath it all, this unspoken tension that made my palms sweat. I was halfway through a latte when I saw him walk in. Aaron looked effortlessly cool in a casual button-down and jeans, the same warm smile that had disarmed me at the clinic lighting up his face. He waved me over, and as I stood to meet him, my heart gave one of those unpredictable flutters that felt a little like falling. "Hey," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. "Thanks for coming." "Thanks for asking," I replied, trying to sound chill even though my voice probably betrayed me. We ordered some pastries and settled into easy conversation. Nothing medical, just the usual stuff like favorite movies, music, the city's best hidden spots. It quickly became clear that Aaron wasn't just a good doctor. He was genuinely interesting and funny, with this knack for making you feel like you're the only person in the room. At one point, he asked, "So how have you been feeling since the appointment?" I hesitated, then shrugged. Honestly, better than I expected. That whole checkup was way more intense than I thought it would be, but it made me think about stuff I've been ignoring. He nodded knowingly. Sometimes the body gives us signals, but it takes a little digging to understand what they mean. I found myself opening up more than I usually would with someone I just met outside of work or casual hangouts. There was something about him, his genuine warmth, the way he listened without judgment, that made it easier. At one point, the conversation drifted to relationships. I confessed I'd been pretty burned out by dating apps and shallow sleep-togethers. "It's like everyone's just looking for something quick and easy," I said. "I want something more real, but it feels impossible to find." Aaron leaned in slightly, his voice dropping just a notch. "I get that. I think a lot of people are searching for that too. But sometimes it's about being brave enough to recognize it when it shows up." That felt like a direct message, and I wasn't sure if it was just me reading too much into it, but I caught his eyes lingering on mine just a little longer than before. We ended up talking for hours, losing track of time until the coffee shop started to clear out, and the sky outside shifted to that soft, dusky blue. When it was finally time to leave, Aaron walked me to the door. "Can I see you again?" he asked, that same easy smile playing on his lips. I laughed nervously. "Yeah, I'd like that." We exchanged a quick hug that caught me off guard with its warmth. When I pulled away, I realized how much I wanted to kiss him, but held myself back, unsure of the timing, unsure if it was too soon. As I walked home that night, my mind was buzzing with a mix of excitement and confusion. Here I was, a guy who thought he was just going for a checkup, suddenly navigating this weird, thrilling connection with his doctor turned maybe something more. Over the next few weeks, our coffee meetups became a regular thing. Each time, the walls between doctor and person crumbled a little more. We shared stories, laughter, and sometimes comfortable silences that weren't awkward, but comforting. One afternoon, after we'd spent a lazy Sunday wandering a local art gallery, Aaron turned to me and said, "You know, the professional in me might say this is unorthodox. But the guy in me? He's really glad we met." I smiled, feeling my heart swell. Me too. That night, after he walked me to my door, something shifted. For the first time, the boundary blurred in a way that left no room for hesitation. I reached up, my fingers tracing the curve of his jaw, and he leaned in, closing the distance between us. The kiss was gentle but loaded with everything we'd both been holding back, the uncertainty, the longing, the thrill of crossing lines. When we finally pulled apart, Aaron rested his forehead against mine and whispered, I want to see where this goes with you." "Me too." I breathed. It wasn't a smooth fairy tale. There were moments of doubt, the awkwardness of reconciling our roles, and the worry about what others might think. But every time I looked at him, I knew it was worth it. What started as a checkup that went too far became the beginning of something I never saw coming, a connection that healed not just my body, but my heart. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Navigating the shift from doctor and patient to something more complicated was, honestly, a roller coaster. I won't pretend it was smooth sailing. There were moments when I caught myself overthinking every text, every glance, wondering if this was all just too messy or if we were crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. But then there were those moments when everything felt so natural that I forgot about the awkwardness altogether. One afternoon, Aaron invited me over to his place after one of our usual coffee hangouts. I was nervous, actually butterflies in my stomach nervous. His apartment wasn't far from mine, just a couple blocks away in one of those converted loft buildings with exposed brick and huge windows that let in that perfect golden light. The moment I stepped inside, that nervous energy melted a bit because his place felt warm and lived in, not like some sterile doctor's office. He poured us each a glass of wine, red, my favorite, and we settled on his couch, a plush thing that looked like the perfect spot to curl up on a rainy day. We talked about everything and nothing, and I noticed how his eyes softened when he looked at me, like he was really seeing me, not just the guy who came in for a checkup. At one point, he reached out, fingertips brushing against mine, and I held his hand without hesitation. That simple touch sent a current through me that was impossible to ignore. "You know," he said, a little hesitant, "I've thought about how unconventional this all is. Me being your doctor, and now this." He gestured vaguely between us. I laughed softly, feeling the tension ease. "Yeah, I won't lie, it's pretty wild, but I'm glad you asked me out. I haven't felt this connected in a long time." He smiled, his eyes twinkling. "Me neither." The night unfolded in that easy way that happens when two people are genuinely into each other. We talked about past relationships, fears, hopes for the future. When the moment finally came, it wasn't rushed or pressured. Just two people leaning in, exploring something new. Our first kiss in his living room was slow and tentative at first, like testing the water, before deepening into something that left me short of breath. Afterward, we just sat close, foreheads touching, smiles lingering. Over the next few weeks, our relationship took on a rhythm of its own. We balanced the line between professional and personal in a way that felt surprisingly respectful. I made sure to keep my appointments with him strictly medical, never letting things get complicated in the clinic. Outside of work, we were just two guys figuring out how to be together. One evening after a long day at the office, I texted him, feeling wiped. "Think I need one of those massages you were joking about?" Within minutes, he replied, "I'm pretty good at more than just checkups. When do you want to test that theory?" A few days later, I found myself at his apartment again, this time sprawled on his couch, muscles tense from the week's stress. Aaron was patient and gentle, his hands working out knots in my shoulders and neck. The way he cared for me in that moment went beyond any professional obligation. It was personal, tender, and exactly what I hadn't realized I needed. Afterwards, as we lay side by side on his couch, I felt this overwhelming sense of peace. "I don't know how this all happened," I told him, voice soft, "but I'm really glad it did." He smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from my forehead. "Me too. You're different from anyone I've met, and I want to be with you." That night, wrapped in his arms, I felt safe for the first time in a long while. But it wasn't all perfect. The reality of our situation kept sneaking in. His role as my doctor, the potential judgment if anyone found out. I worried about what friends or family might think. Would they understand? Or would they see it as some taboo? One afternoon, I told Aaron about my worries. What if this doesn't work? Or what if people find out and it ruins your career? I don't want to be the reason you get in trouble. He took my hands in his, looking serious. I've thought about that too, but I'm willing to take that risk because you matter. We'll be careful, and when the time's right, we'll figure out how to make it public or not. That honesty meant everything to me. We decided to keep things private for now, living in that bubble where the world outside didn't matter as much as the connection we were building. As months passed, we grew closer, learning each other's quirks, sharing late-night talks and lazy Sunday mornings. Aaron showed me that sometimes the best medicine isn't a pill or a procedure, it's human connection. And maybe, just maybe, his checkup really had gone too far, but it led me exactly where I needed to be. Looking back, I still smile at how unexpected it all was. A routine appointment turned into something extraordinary, teaching me that sometimes the most healing thing in the world is simply being seen and loved for who you really are. A year later, sitting across from Aaron in that same little coffee shop where it all began, I still can't believe how much my life has changed. Not just because of him, but because of what we built together. Something real, something steady, something that turned out to be exactly what I needed. We found our balance between doctor and boyfriend, between care and love, without losing sight of who we are. Aaron still jokes that he never expected a routine checkup to become the start of a relationship, but he says it with that same warm smile, the one that makes me feel like I'm home. Sometimes, when I think back to that first appointment, I'm amazed at how much courage it took for me to lean into the unexpected, to trust someone enough to let my guard down. Because, honestly, that was the real healing all along. Not just the blood tests or the exams, but feeling seen and understood in a way I hadn't allowed myself before. We've had our challenges, sure. Navigating privacy, juggling our schedules, and sometimes just reminding ourselves to slow down and breathe. But every step has been worth it. Last weekend, Aaron surprised me with a picnic in the park. We sat under a big oak tree, sharing food and laughter, the city's hum fading into the background. As the sun dipped low, he reached out, took my hand in his, and said softly, "Thank you for trusting me." I squeezed his hand, feeling the weight of those words. Thank you for seeing me. It's moments like that, quiet, simple, honest, that remind me how lucky I am. How sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. So yeah, my doctor's checkup went too far. But for once, going too far felt just right. And I'm grateful every day that I took that chance.